The stress test just got removed with an asterisk and a caveat as part of the mortgage charter of rights. So I'll be covering all of that on this week's reaction video, on top of this interesting 2 tidbits that came out of the federal budget regarding housing affordability, which affects short-term rentals, so like Airbnbs, and also the housing affordability prices. Now, as we're winding down towards the end of the year, a lot of the times I personally have found that the best deals are found in December, but that was not true in 2022. Just because no one was actually selling at the time. It was not true in 2021 because it was raging hot. 2020 was not true. 2019, kind of not true. Wasn't really until 2018 that there was some good deals to add. And I feel like this year in 2023 is actually going to be where you can find some opportunities. And the thinking behind all of this is that anybody who needs to sell, it's probably going to stay on the market in December. I'm going to talk more about this later on in the month, but anyone who doesn't need to sell or they're just kind of testing it out will probably terminate and go to market again in the new year. So anything that's left in December probably has some room for a haircut. And this is why a lot of my investor clients right now, they're just kind of gearing up to see what kind of deals they can have and see what kind of low balls they can throw at sellers to see if they actually get a response or it sticks, right? And if you want to be part of that cohort of my clients that are looking for awesome deals in December, you can book a call with me using the link that's right here. It's www.chatwithzen.com. Simply click on the date and a time that works best for you. And then when you see the prompt, fill in your name, email, mobile phone number, and the question you have for me, and then we'll chat then. Good day, Toronto. Welcome to another episode of Prime Properties TV. My name is Zhen, and I run and operate at Remax in the Greater Toronto area, on top of making awesome educational real estate content just like this one for you. And if you enjoy this content, do me a solid and smash the like button and subscribe to the Prime Properties channel. The first article we'll be covering is what is the Canadian Mortgage Charter, everything you need to know about it, and why did they remove the stress test? Dun, 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 dun. Again, there's a caveat in that, and I'll cover this. So as we scroll down, there's a couple things that they highlight. Now, one of the things I will point out is this is all proposed, right? So it has to still go through bills and people have to pass it. And some of these things that we're talking about, I don't know how the bank's going to say, yeah, sure, go for it. But you know, it's in the works, right? And nothing really gets like a lot of government intervention, like quite an election year coming up when they're polling terribly for housing, right? So I've broken down the things that they have proposed. And just because it's kind of hard to read, I just like separate them in different colors, right? So, you know, each one is like alternating color, goes yellow, green, yellow, green, yellow, green, right? So the first one that they have is under the new mortgage charter, lenders will be expected to notify mortgage holders 4 to 6 months in advance of the renewal date. Okay, so this is pointless. It's always been the case. If you ever had a mortgage renew, they usually mail you a piece of letter that has, hey, this is your rate. All you have to do is check a box and it's yours. So by doing that, you would have been notified already, right? So, you know, political theater. Second one, the charter also emphasizes expectations that lenders should have appropriate mortgage relief policies for at-risk consumers, such as extending amortizations. So the thing I would look at here is at risk. And what at risk probably means is hardship, is my understanding of it. But this is also not new. And I've talked about this on the channel many times before. Since the pandemic, if you can go to a bank and show you have a hardship, right, they will extend your amortization out 40 years, right? Now, depending on how much your balance is and what the definition of hardship is, obviously some may do it, some may not. And I've even talked to a lot of clients and like even talked about on the channel before that, hey, look, if you're having trouble, go to the bank first. See if they can stretch your payments and see if that stretch payment on 40 years makes a difference to kind of your ability to keep the home. So that is also not new, but maybe they like quantify what at risk is, right? So maybe that's kind of helpful. And the last thing I will add on that is I'm pretty sure Zhen, which is one of the title insurance company, already sent out like anyone can automatically go to 40 years if they have an insured mortgage, right? So that stuff is like all there already. So yeah. Next one. The charter will also require lenders to waive fees and costs that will have otherwise been charged for relief measures. So again, this could probably help. Some of the stuff was already waived before, but maybe if like, you know, discharges, disbursements, stuff like that, maybe waived, maybe you save a few $100 here and there. I don't know to what extent it is. So like it could be some new stuff, but it could be like some old stuff wrapped in some new stuff represented back to you. Could be also that too, right? Then you got, they axed the requirement that mortgage holders will have to re-qualify under the minimum qualifying rate when switching lenders at mortgage renewal time. So this chunk right here is the stress test. I've talked about it before, and we're saying they should probably make that kind of change so that the banks don't kind of got you by the cojones to go for a higher rate. So essentially, if say you're at bank A right now and you can't qualify for the same mortgage at a different bank anymore because the rates are that much higher now. So like say you got it during the pandemic for 2%, now you're at 6.5%, so you have to qualify at 8. So effectively you're going from that minimum qualifying rate of like 5%, which is the stress test, like 5.25%, to now like 8 and a bit, right? So that's up 300 basis points. So that prevents a lot of people from moving to a different bank, and it prevents competition, right? And that's something I called out before. So what they're saying that they're removing that, but this is why I'm saying it's a little bit hokey. It's only for insured mortgages. So this is basically anyone who put down less than 20%. So this is all the mortgage holders that did sub $1 million purchase. And then they went from like 5 to like 7.5%, give or take, depending on what the purchase price was or how much down they put, right? So yes, they will be able to qualify and port over, but I don't think that's that big of a number. So that's kind of why I say like, hey, look, this sounds great. And that's why in the beginning I said there's a caveat, there's an asterisk to it. But most people have 20% down, right? Especially if your average price in Toronto is like 1.1, right? And to show you, I pulled out some like older stats from CMHC. You can basically see here, the right side of every single one of these columns is insured mortgage, which is less than 20%. And on the left side is, uninsured, meaning more than 20%. So you can see completely trumps insured in 2021. So that segment of people who are renewing after the 3 or 4 year from 2020 into 2021, very, very small, very, very small. And you can see across the board too, very, very small, very small. So kind of hokey, but at least it helps some people, like maybe like 20% of the mortgage holders or maybe a little bit less. Then the next one is, under the charter, homeowners will be able to make lump sum payments to avoid negative amortization. That's always been the case. The banks have sent out notices saying that, hey, can you make lump sum payments so they're not negative amortizing on their books? Also, if you're at any of the big banks, there's generally like prepayments that have no penalty. Most of the colorful big banks are 20% of the original mortgage that you kind of borrowed from, that you can just go, bam, 20% paid off. The problem is, yes, this is to help people right now, but if you're struggling, where are you going to get the money for the lump sum payment? Anyways, yeah. Next one. They're able to sell their principal residence without any prepayment penalties. This one is so short that it could be amazing. It could also be absolutely terrible. So obviously it says principal residence can't be an investment property. But let's say you're struggling and maybe you have a fixed rate or even a variable, right? And you need to get rid of it. What the definition of struggling is, right? Without paying the prepayment penalty could be a pretty significant amount, right? Because if you're breaking a variable right now, it's 3 months interest, right? So that on a $500,000, I think is like $2,500 to maybe $2,000, somewhere around there, depending on the rate of interest alone. So that's about $7,500 in savings if you need to sell because of hardship and you can avoid paying that penalty at the bank. Now, if you're at a fixed, if you have a very long term remaining, I mean, it's a huge amount, right? So this gets tacked on in the future, it's going to make a big difference. But no one's selling something if they have a fixed rate mortgage right now because it's probably lower than what they got, right now. So yes, this could be very, very like big moving things, and it could be kind of like a semi bailout for people who kind of YOLO'd into their first home. But we need to see more things on that to see if it's actually going to move the needle, right? So far, this is the first one that may be new and may be helpful to homeowners. And at the same time, it kind of bails them out. So like maybe like people who aren't homeowners are a little bit upset. Then you got the last one. It also prevents interest from being charged on interest during any temporary period of amortization. That's always been the case. They put that out when the trigger rates thing was there. So again, a lot of foo-foo. Maybe one of them is very good, but yeah, really not that great overall. To me, it's almost kind of like, hey, here are a bunch of stuff on a plate. We just wrapped it around into some gift wrapping paper, put a bow on it, but it's the same thing. But here you go, Canadians, here you go. We're trying. Yeah, try harder. Okay, so the next one we got here is 6 highlights from the fall economic statements. And this is about the Airbnb and some housing affordability, right? So the first one I'm gonna go through is the government plans to basically spend $1 billion to build 7,000 new homes by 2028. So, that's in, call it 5 years or so. So I quickly did the math on this, right? If you are $1 billion, which is quite some money, it's a lot of zeros here. It means it's $142,000 per home. I don't know what they're building. Maybe like if they're repurposing some properties that they own already, and that's like a renovation budget. But I don't know what they're building for $142,000 for affordable homes, right? So yeah, we'll find out. Then you got the next one here, which is, hey, we are going to provide $15 billion with the B, again, a lot of money, to help the construction of 30,000 new homes, which is, I think, wonderful, meaning that they're going to inject some money, call it tax incentives or some breaks or low financing, as what they're saying right now, to help kind of the builders to develop some homes. Now, what I will say is these may not be affordable depending on what metric you're using. If you are having a hard time, like, on minimum salary in Toronto, I don't think these will be affordable. I suspect this will be market rent. Some are going to call them luxury, but the only reason developers will probably build these is that if there is money to be made. So they're probably at market rent. Can the subsidization of these things be from lower financing costs by the government bring the market value down a little bit? Maybe for a little bit, but I'm pretty sure they're going to increase the rent. But what it will do is it'll increase the supply of rentals so that rents shouldn't be increasing as fast, because they've been going like 10% per year for the last few years, which is nuts. So it may help. And when I earmark this, 15 billion of the B divided by 30,000 units, that's $500,000 of, call it financing costs. I think it moves the needle, right? And then the next thing here we got is the clampdown on Airbnbs, right? So essentially what they are doing is saying, hey, if you own an Airbnb, which in Toronto, you have to have it as your primary residence, and you can do it for 180 days, right? And if you're in a condo, it has to be within a condo bylaw. Granted, some people break the rules, right? So you are no longer able to deduct the expenses on that property, which could move the needle on making it feasible or not, right? So if, say you made $100,000 and your mortgage interest is $80,000, your net revenue on that is $20,000. Now they're preventing you from reducing that $80,000 on your tax return, right? Which is a lot of money, right? Now, here's the thing I will point out that's kind of strange. Provinces and towns that have prohibited this type of leasing, they're doing it because of that. If they prohibited that, why do they need to tack on another layer of making it more difficult? Which just tells me that the policing of this is not that great. So in Toronto, it's fairly easy to get a short-term license. There's a lot of loopholes around it. I'm not going to mention it in this video. But the fact that people are still doing it means that they're not policing it hard enough, because a lot of people are breaking the rules. And if this comes in, will it be another loophole, call it, or maybe another workaround for this? Possibly. I don't know. I didn't really think about it too much, because I need to talk to the property managers that I know. But I don't think it's going to move the needle, because it's just another layer on top of it. But can it scare some people and bring some inventory back onto the market, like scare the investors about this stuff? Yeah, probably. Will it help? Probably not, but may increase the supply by a tiny, tiny bit, right? Yeah. And also, I mean, keep in mind, they're spending $50 million to police this thing, right? And when Toronto introduced the short-term rental stuff in 2019, it took until now before they start getting the licensing and policing it, right? So where's this $50 million going to go? I don't know, right? And then the final thing I got here is new deficit targets, right? They're saying that they're going to reduce their deficit to about 40 billion or 1% of GDP. I'm just throwing this in the last bit of this video because I don't think they're pricing in a recession, and that GDP could contract and tax revenues could come down. Because when I go look at a lot of deficits that they have on the Canada website, it is nowhere close to where they need it to be. So this is a percentage of GDP. They're trying to bring it in line of 1%, which we've seen in late 90s up until financial crisis, right? But ever since then, we've been in deficit, and 1% will bring us back here. I mean, we definitely look great coming from the pandemic until now, but to say that, hey, we're going to reduce the deficit to 1%, assuming there's no recession, we'll see. We'll see. Anyways, I hope this gives you an idea of what's happening in the real estate market and how some of these things will affect maybe you, especially the mortgage charter of rights. I honestly think it's nothing burger, as I say, but if there is kind of the removal of the prepayment, maybe that'll help, but I don't think it's going to move the needle that much. It really, to me, sounds like they just prepackage a bunch of stuff that was already in existence on silver platter with a little bow on it and say, hey guys, we're trying here. But in reality, no, they should really try harder. Anyways, if you are looking for some help on how to navigate this market, and if you want to be one of those clients who are looking for an opportunity in December, because I really do think there is some opportunity in December of this year, 2023, you can book a call with me using the link right here. It's www.chatwithzen.com. Until next time, your move, your future. See ya! Now that I'm done watching this video, I think you should check out this video. And you know what? Why don't you check out this video too?